Support for the show comes from Capital.com. Capital.com is an award-winning investment platform that aims to accelerate financial inclusion worldwide. For seasoned traders, Capital.com offers competitive, transparent pricing, 24-hour support in over 10 languages, as well as news, analysis, and insights to help you make informed decisions. If you've never traded before, Capital.com's Education Hub includes in-depth courses to help you get started. For more information, visit Capital, that's CAPITAL.com.
So you sort of start, at least what we started with was a desire to solve a problem, right? Whatever that problem is. And I compare our journey as a company a lot to like a biotech startup, where there's a specific problem you're trying to solve, but there are steps in the R&D process to get to that problem and to get to a final product. So what we had when we started the company is these different, let's say, solutions that would contribute to a system that would help solve this problem around how can we sustainably grow food to help feed the planet in a place where like there's no fresh water and it's really hot, right? So that's the challenge.
Hi, everyone, and welcome to Conversations with Loulou. My guest is Dr. Ryan Lefers, the co-founder and CEO of RedSea, an agriculture and climate tech company founded out of King Abdullah University for Science and Technology, or KAUST, in Saudi Arabia. Dr. Ryan holds a PhD in environmental engineering from KAUST and is an expert in controlled environment agriculture systems. We'll be talking about climate and food security, as well as the challenges and opportunities of building both hardware and software technologies out of our region. Ryan, welcome to the show.
Oh, thank you. It's great to be here.
I'm glad you made the time to come and see me on your visit.
Yeah, well, I've been really looking forward to this for a long time. So
great to have you.
I'm excited that it's happening.
Yeah, I'm excited too. Maybe we can start with your trip to the Middle East. So I know you were at KAUST since 2013, since January 2013.
Yep.
And you're American.
Right. I am. Yeah.
What is it about the desert that appealed to you so much?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. So I actually grew up on a farm in the Midwest in the United States. So I have farming in my blood. And I don't know, like when I did my degrees in agricultural engineering, I was working in environmental consulting. I don't know, I had this desire to, work on big challenges. Like I've always been interested in problem solving, and this whole challenge of like, how do you feed people, especially in like a desert environment, was really interesting to me.
Okay.
And it was a big challenge and right in line with sort of my experience as well as my interests. And so it's sort of a much longer story of how I got to KAUST, but KAUST was that amazing opportunity for me to come to the desert and to take a look at some of those problems. And so, yeah, I arrived in January of 2013 with my wife and 2 kids at the time.
Oh, wow.
We came from Minnesota. It was freezing. We arrived in Saudi Arabia near Jeddah in January, and it was beautiful, like nice weather on the beach. So yeah, it was a great introduction.
Wow. How did you convince your wife and 2 kids to make the move? That must have been...
Yeah. Well, the kids were quite young at the time. I think it was just a matter of like telling them like there's a beach, and they were... excited about it. My wife took a bit more convincing, but, we really loved our time in Saudi Arabia. It was amazing.
You spent 9 years?
Yeah, 9 years. 9 years. Yeah.
Okay. And now you're back in the US.
That's right. Yep. Back in the US.
So at KAUST, you specialize in, what is it called? Controlled environment agriculture. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's right.
So, and you talk a lot about like the nexus between food, water, and energy.
Yeah.
So can you tell us why is this important? What do we need to know?
I think the reason you need to know, especially in like a water scarce climate, is like anytime you eat something, whatever you're eating has a water footprint is what we call it. Mm-hmm. And so basically the idea is like how much water did it take to produce that thing that you're eating? And what a lot of people don't realize is that so I'm sitting here with a cup of water, the food that we eat has a much larger water footprint than the water we drink or like the water we use in the shower. these sort of things.
Which means it's composed of more water?
It just takes more water to produce it.
To produce, okay.
Yeah, to produce it.
Not within it.
Yeah, not within it.
Okay,
no,
to grow
it's
it.
the idea that, to grow it. So like if you look at like a tomatoes, thing we talk about a lot. So a tomato on average globally takes something like 200 liters of water to produce a kilogram of tomatoes. Okay.
Wow.
In a hot, like arid climate, like the Arabian Peninsula, on average, we use around 300 to 350 liters of water to grow a kilogram of tomatoes.
Okay.
So every time you're consuming that tomato, as an example, you can think about like, well, how much water did it take to actually make this tomato? Some food takes more. So like meat, generally, the meat that you eat generally has a larger water footprint because you're actually growing like a plant to then feed to, for example, a cow and then make the meat. The other thing to think about is there's differences in the water sources. So they're sort of classified into what we call green, blue, and gray water sources. The idea is that a green water source would be natural, something like rain. So it might take, it might take 200 liters of water to grow tomato in Sri Lanka, for example. But if it's coming naturally from the sky, that's a renewable resource. Where we use water from underground and it's non-recharging, that's something that's a finite resource. And so that's where, especially in the Arabian Gulf, it gets more challenging, is like, well, how do we use water in a way that's sustainable? Because our water resources here, we just don't get the recharge, like the natural rainwater that you get in a lot of other parts of the planet.
Yes. And if you want to use water that's desalinated, for example, that has a very high energy
footprint.
Yeah,
So there's
yeah.
the connection with energy.
Okay.
Yeah,
So I'm going to ask you about that, but we define RedSea as a agri-tech or climate tech company or a mix of both. How would you describe it?
So we really think of ourselves as a climate tech company that is trying to solve for agriculture. I'll give you an example. So in the water context, as a planet, about 70 to 80% of our water resources are used for agriculture. Again, think of the food on your plate.
This is the fresh water.
Yeah, this is fresh water. So as a global average, in hot desert climates, again, it's even more. So we're looking around sometimes 80, 90% of the water is used in agriculture. And so I like to use this analogy of a boat that's sinking.
Okay.
So imagine you're in a boat that's sinking and there's multiple holes to plug. Like, which hole should you plug first? You should plug the big one. And agriculture is that big one in terms of, right now, water use and the opportunity to contribute to sustainability and to decrease our water use. So that's really it. So from a climate perspective, again, so focusing on that big hole, so to speak, as well as the additional benefits of, look, we're helping to feed people, we're helping to improve livelihoods, give people jobs, reduce carbon emissions. So there's all these side benefits when we apply these technologies in agriculture.
Interesting. I was going to ask you, how do you choose which problem to work on? Because there are so many.
Yeah,
so how do
exactly.
you, like in that life cycle that you go through or that you went through?
Yeah.
Like, tell us a little bit about RedSea and what are you doing exactly? And
yeah, sure.
How did you choose that particular problem to work on?
Yeah, okay. So, we've gone through quite a journey as a company, but really when we started the company, it was around like, how do we make agriculture more sustainable in climates like the Arabian Peninsula?
And was that like a mandate from KAUST, or is this something
this
that
was something we were interested in as founders. So KAUST is also interested in this, right? So at the time when I joined KAUST, they had sort of the 4 pillars. I think it was food, water, energy, and environment, which really happens to be like all things that are a part of what we're doing now as a company.
Okay.
But as co-founders, like it really came from our skill sets as well. I grew up on a farm. I was an agricultural engineer, but just then looking to apply that in this climate and to do it in a sustainable way.
Okay, so you have two co-founders.
Yep.
Right?
Yep,
So
Mark and Daria.
okay.
Yeah.
And so how did you, okay, so can you tell us a little bit about the beginning of RedSea? So how?
Yeah, of course. Of
How did
course.
it
So
all
actually, so it was Mark and I originally, and actually it was I think it was the day after, like, so I was actually a PhD student. I did my PhD at KAUST. And then Mark was on my committee. He's not an engineer, he's a plant scientist, but he knew, that I was graduating. He knew what I had been working on from an engineering perspective. I knew what some of the things he'd been doing from a plant science perspective. And we just said, well, we were looking at how can we get these technologies out into the world, like rather than just have them in a research paper or in a lab. And at the time, there was a lot of talk and support around entrepreneurship. It was something that was really growing as a wave that was coming in Saudi Arabia.
This was what?
This was it was the end of 2018, actually.
Okay.
We said, well, let's give it a try. Like, why not? Like, if we can get this out to actually make an impact in the world, it would be amazing. So that was really it. It was really around, like, how can we get these technologies out for the benefit of people and the planet? So that was Mark and I sitting down. I actually met Daria not much later. I think it was 2 months later, something like that. She had heard somehow that Mark and I were working on this company, and we were going to be looking at controlled environment agriculture. There were going to be some plant breeding. And she had a technology as well for heat blocking. Actually, it was converting the part of the solar spectrum that is heat, which we call the near infrared, into energy. And so she came, I still remember, we were sitting outside of the library at a table, and she said, like, I've got this, I'm working on this technology that it blocks heat and then it can convert it to electricity. And I said to her, like, if you can just block the heat, like that is like 90% of what we need done for these controlled environments. Because what you have with a controlled environment in a place like, again, the Arabian Peninsula, like here in the UAE, it's just a big clear box in the desert, and it gets really hot. Yeah, but and you have to put AC in it because otherwise it gets really hot.
Yeah.
So
it's like a greenhouse. A controlled environment is a greenhouse.
So we called it a controlled environment because it's like a greenhouse. You can also have it's net houses. So these are more open to like air movement. Sometimes you just have like that you call it protected agriculture, where it's like a tunnel. But it's these different systems. And in all cases, you're using natural light, which again is free, completely sustainable because it's coming every day. So what we've got now is these filters that filter the heat, but let in the light for photosynthesis. Anyway, so that's how I met Mark and Daria. Fast forward to where we are now. Actually, Daria was working on a separate company at the time, and we ended up merging them together. So anyway.
Okay, so you're three scientists. Each one had their own invention, so to speak.
Yeah, that's right.
And then you came together and you founded RedSea.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, and you have three major products, right?
We do. Yeah.
Okay, can you?
Yeah, sure. So the one I mentioned already, we call Iris. So Iris is our heat blocking covering material for protected agriculture. So heat blocking roof, you can think about.
So this is this looks like a film that you put on top of the greenhouse. What does it look like?
Well, it's actually it's like a film. So it can go into different products. So actually, the product itself is a nanomaterial, and so. It's like an additive that you put into the roof itself when you're manufacturing it. So if you have most greenhouse roofs globally have some plastic base, a polymer base. So it's polyethylene or polycarbonate. And so in that manufacturing process, we add our nanomaterial, the Iris nanomaterial, and then it's extruded, and then the end product comes out with Iris inside. So we think of it, it's almost like an Intel Inside type of idea, right? Okay. So you get your final product with Iris inside. And so we work with partner manufacturers who actually do the manufacturing of the final material. And then farmers are just able to take that and put it on their structure, their greenhouse structure, net house, or whatever it is. And the beauty of the product, there's a lot of things that's really great about it, but is that there's no training required. Like you just put it on and it works. And that's it.
Yeah, but no train. So when you are talking to customers, are you selling essentially to the manufacturers or to the actual farmers?
Well, at the end of the day, it's the farmers who stand to benefit. So like the farmers are the ones who drive demand from the manufacturers. And actually now some of our manufacturing partners are like seeing the opportunity now that like, because they've seen it on the farm and they're like, wow, this is really, really cool.
Okay.
And so we're now starting to work with some of the manufacturers as well directly, and they're selling through their own channels into the farms, and they're like helping in terms of the sales side. But initially, we had to do our own sales direct to the final customers, which are the farmers. But yeah, they're seeing the results, and it's really cool.
How are you received when you talk to farmers? Because based on my research, I saw that there's a massive amount of people in the MENA region, for example. I think there's around 90 million people that depend on farming and agriculture, livestock, and fisheries for their living. Yeah, that's a big number of people. And typically these farms, I mean, you have probably major farms, producers. Yeah. And you have a lot of like very, very small farms. Right. So how are you received when you go out with these technologies, assuming that, yes, you have the big guys that are tech enabled maybe, but you have the vast majority of farmers that probably are still doing things in a very analog way, right?
So we started selling the Iris product earlier this year. So we're still on our journey in terms of the sales cycle. But what we started with is really working with some of those farmers that are more tech enabled because they get it. They get the performance and why it would be important. And they're also like they're the early adopters that are like ready to try something new. And most farmers that we work with, they don't just say like the product almost sounds too good to be true, because you get this huge benefit of like reducing your leaf temperature, you reduce water use, we see increased yields, increased quality, like it's better for the people who are working there because it's not as hot. Like all these huge benefits, it almost sounds too good to be true. So people are rightly a bit skeptical. And so they're like, okay, so I'll buy some of this and I'll try it just on a section of my farm. And so they buy it and they try it, and inevitably, like it works. And then they're like, okay, I'll get some more. Okay. And then the neighbors see it, and the neighbors are like, what's that? And then so you started to get this like word of mouth in terms of adoption. And I don't think it's dissimilar to, if you look at protected agriculture globally, like so greenhouses or net houses, like it is a higher upfront cost than just growing in the open field. Exactly. So people have adopted protected agriculture on a gigantic scale globally now. You know, we're talking about like, you know, in the like millions of hectares. And for high value crops like berries.
Do you know
what
percentage that is?
Is protected agriculture?
Like in terms of like total agriculture?
I don't know in terms of total agriculture. What I can tell you is that in terms of like, if you look at just your, like your berries and your fresh vegetables, like the bulk of those, and I don't have the percentage offhand, but the bulk of those are produced under some form of protected agriculture. Okay. So it could be a net, could be a film, but they're grown under those systems. Okay. Yeah.
So this is Iris. So this blocks heat.
Yep, that's right.
And lets the good rays come in.
Yeah, that's right.
Right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so it cools, it helps basically reduce the cooling bills and all of that stuff.
Yeah, so what it does is that it can reduce your cooling bills definitely if you're using cooling. A lot of the systems globally don't. So we work with a lot of farms in, for example, like Morocco or like the south of Spain, Mexico, even Egypt, that you don't have active cooling.
Okay.
We call it passive cooling, but really it's natural ventilation, like the wind blows through.
Okay.
Even in those systems, because it's almost like, the way I describe it to people is like, if you're standing outside and it's hot, you go stand in the shade. Mm-hmm. Why? Because you don't want that heat from the sun hitting your skin. Like the air temperature is the same, but you feel cooler in the shade because you don't have that radiation on your skin. So what Iris does is it prevents that radiation from hitting the skin of the plant, the leaves. And so the plants sweat less, which, is transpiration. So they're not transpiring as much. So it reduces your water use. It's the plants are more comfortable, like they yield more. We're able to extend the cropping season. And it's all because like we're just preventing that intense heat load from the sun from hitting the leaves of the plant.
Okay, so I think our audience can check out the website and look at the other products. And because I wanted to ask you a little bit on, I'm an entrepreneur. I'm very much interested in how you went on building this thing. Because a lot of entrepreneurs might get, intimidated from building hardware, right? A lot of entrepreneurs we see today are building software companies.
Right.
Venture capital money is going into software companies. What you did is, it's not the norm, at least not yet.
Yeah, sure.
So can you take us through the kind of the life cycle of this deep tech company? So how does it start in a lab? Like, how do you think about the technologies that you want to do? How do you produce them initially, test them? Can you take me through that sort of life cycle? I know also that takes a lot of time and money as well to get through that R&D stage. So maybe talk to us about that.
Yeah, it's a lot of trial and error. But so you sort of start, at least what we started with was a desire to solve a problem, right? Whatever that problem is. And I compare our journey as a company a lot to like a biotech startup, where there's a specific problem you're trying to solve, but there are steps in the R&D process to get to that problem and to get to a final product. So what we had when we started the company is these different, let's say, solutions that would contribute to a system that would help solve this problem around how can we sustainably grow food to help feed the planet in a place where like there's no fresh water and it's really hot, right? So that's the challenge. And then we started, and there were a number of different technologies that we had at the beginning that we were like, okay, any of these might work, or like they all work at lab scale, but then you have to get them from the lab into like a final product. And so that definitely takes time. And then there was COVID disruption in the middle of that, and then, like supply chain disruption. And so it's been an interesting journey. But the cool thing is like, as we've moved from lab to product and now selling product into the market, is that like we've gotten there, and it's just so amazing to have something physical that you can touch, that like you can see the results on, because you can go, like we have these sites where we have like A/B comparisons of like under iris and not under iris, and you can just see it on the plants like right away. And because it's something physical, like it's in the real world, like you can taste it. And you've put so much like time, effort, blood, sweat, and tears into making it. Like it's just so rewarding to see it and like to see it out in the world.
You test on what do you farm? Tomatoes?
Yeah. So we actually, as part of our journey as a company, and we've been a technology company all along, like creating these climate technologies for agriculture. As part of our journey, we actually set up a production company in Saudi Arabia, which was really focused around like testing our technologies and developing our technologies in our own farm. So that was RedSea Farms. And we were able to grow tomatoes. We did cucumbers, these really nice tasting snack peppers, as well as some strawberries in that system. And we continue to sell
In Saudi.
in Saudi under that system.
Okay.
But like globally, like our mandate, our target as a company is to sell technology. Like we want to enable the farming industry to continue to thrive and be sustainable in a climate that's getting increasingly hotter.
Okay, so the goal is not to have your own
No.
produce, basically.
No.
Okay.
That's correct. Yeah.
Okay, but that's fun though.
Yeah. And you learn a lot.
Planting those tomatoes.
Yeah, that's right.
So what was the role of KAUST in all of this? So I mean, obviously, how much time did you guys spend in the lab on developing these technologies before you commercialized it?
Oh yeah, well that's a good question. I mean, so a lot. I mean, so there's a lot of benefit to us as a company from the fact that, and Mark and Derry are still professors at KAUST, and that, you know, able to use the facilities at KAUST, you know, the technologies like Iris, for example, came out of Daria's lab, work that she was doing again around these photovoltaics, but that you can't really put a dollar value on that work and the stage it was at when we got it, and then started to work on making a product out of it. So it's really valuable in terms of like that university spin out opportunity. So yeah, KAUST was a significant contributor to our success, at least as a seed of like these ideas and these technologies. As we've grown and as we've gotten, you know, much more commercial and now selling into the market, the role of KAUST has gone down, obviously. But I don't know, it's almost, I don't know if this is a good analogy or not, but like maybe like a a tree and a seed, and then the seed's growing on its own, you know, something like that.
Okay, but KAUST remains. I mean, how does it work? Is KAUST a shareholder in your company today?
Yeah, so KAUST has they actually have an investment fund. So KAUST is one of our early stage investors, and they continue to support us in terms of like, you know, they want us to be successful. Mark and Daria are still professors at KAUST, so we actually think of them as feeder labs. So they
for R&D.
Yeah, for R&D. So like some of the early stage ideas, they can continue to work on in their labs, and then we have the opportunity to license those from the university.
So the IP is owned by the university or by the company?
Well, the original IP was owned by the university. Actually, the way, like, as we have separated as a company in terms of like being a commercial entity, so we have our own IP as well that's been developed in-house as we've built upon some of that original intellectual property. So today, as it stands, like there's still some that we license from the university, but the bulk of the IP that we're using today is actually owned by the company.
Okay.
Yeah.
I was listening to a podcast yesterday with Joe Rogan. I'm sure you're familiar with him.
Oh, yeah.
He had Elon Musk on, and they were talking about Tesla.
Yeah.
And Elon Musk was saying that designing Tesla and designing Cybertruck was actually the easy part. And he said that the hardest part was manufacturing.
Okay.
And how do you manufacture at scale so that you can make the technology affordable?
Yeah.
So how did you how did you work on your manufacturing? How challenging was that process for you?
Yeah. Well, so as you look at the different products that we have, so Iris, we've talked about a bit. So that's the nanomaterial. And then we have Volcano is our plant genetics business. So that's a seeds business. And then we have Cortex, which is our sensors and hardware. So on Iris, like I should probably give all the credit to Dan. Dan's our CTO. But Dan went out and he was the one who originally worked on like making the nanomaterial with his team that we now add to the manufacturing process. And Dan just went out and started talking with manufacturers about getting this in and trying it. And so Dan was the one who was really out there, like sort of making it happen. And now, we have this product that is just, it beautifully blends in to like the manufacturing process for the covering materials. And so, you just go, you add it and you extrude the final product, and then the final product comes out with Iris inside. So we've been able to really leverage third parties for manufacturing. So so one of the things we learned early on, again, in operating our own farms, is that like it had to be easy, whatever it was. Like if we were going to expect someone to adopt a technology, no matter how great the technology was, if it wasn't easy, like forget it. So we've intentionally designed all of our products to be as easy as possible to adopt. And so that means, as the lowest learning curve as possible. But then as well for our manufacturing, and as we think about scaling up, we've also tried to follow that path of like, how can we do this in an asset light way that also allows us to get the technologies into the market as quickly as possible, because not just for our own commercial success, but also because like we actually really care about getting these on the planet as soon as possible, in terms of like into all these channels. So
you didn't consider doing the manufacturing yourselves?
I mean, we talked about it a bit, and then we're like, okay, are we good at that? No, we're not. Do we have anyone that's good at it? No, we don't. Can we scale quickly with that? No, we can't. Okay, well, let's look at this other opportunity then. And so that was sort of the conversations.
Okay, so in terms of funding,
yeah.
Again, we know that I'm sure you know that it's not easy to get funding for deep tech companies, right?
Yeah.
Or climate tech companies.
Yeah.
I don't know how you want to define it. But I mean, there is a national interest, right? Especially in our part of the world. You see, there's a national interest in the UAE, in Saudi Arabia, to increase food production, to improve food security, etc.
Right.
So, how was your funding journey? I mean, were you able to access funds from governments, from sovereign wealth funds? Did you have to go to angel investors and VCs? How did it work?
So I think about our funding journey. So we've raised, so our original investors were KAUST, so the university, and then there's a VC, which is sort of a subdivision of the PIF called Research Products Development Company in Saudi Arabia. Those were our two early stage investors. So really again with a focus of like, okay, something from research into product. So that got us our first step of the way. Then in our next funding rounds, we were able to bring in some strategic investors who either cared about food security or cared about the climate, or who really just saw the opportunity in terms of this big problem to be solved and a commercial opportunity. So we have a great group of investors from the UAE as well as Saudi and the United States who really invested in that vision. And the opportunity that was there. Again, built on intellectual property, like believing in the team and believing that there was a problem that was big and needed to be solved.
Okay. So. And you've raised just over $36 million to date.
In pre-Series A funding, we did just over $36 million. Yeah.
Okay. And that's just the beginning, I would imagine. I would imagine you need a lot more than that.
Well, today where we're at in terms of like having product in market, hopefully not much more, because we're getting a lot of commercial traction because of the product performance. So,
okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's the dream, right?
Yeah, exactly. That's the dream.
Okay. So what are some of the what do you think made you guys so successful in being able to fundraise? Is it your presence at KAUST, for example, helped a lot as scientists at KAUST? I mean, I'm just trying to extract some advice for entrepreneurs that are potentially looking at doing something in deep tech, but they don't know or they don't have the confidence to.
Yeah, I don't know.
I mean,
you should probably talk to our investors. So I'll tell you what I think. So one is like I do believe that we have and had a great team from a pure sort of science perspective. Like Mark and Daria are like unbelievably talented experts in their field, and so they're very believable.
Okay.
And then we did a good job, in my opinion, of bringing in additional team to build around that core capacity, because there's a lot of great
from the region. as
Sorry?
well? Is your team from the region as well?
We have so many nationalities on our team. So right now, like I was just looking at, so I can talk about our team in the early days and our team right now. So our team right now is spread across really 3 continents primarily. So we've got the GCC, Europe, and then in North America as well. But we have, I don't know, it's something like between 20 and 25 nationalities on the team. And we really brought in experts at different stages of the company to help us get to that next stage in our journey. And so I think one of the things we've done well is actually recognize that that scientists are really good at science, but you need commercial people to commercialize. And so we've brought in people who are really commercial to get us to that next stage. And so we've gone through different iterations of our team, as well as like our physical location. So in the early days, the team was only based at KAUST, which is great when you have, it's a research-based product that you're spinning out. But as you move into those next commercial phases, you really need to be where the market is and where the opportunity is. And so really moving people or adding people in those places where the customers are and where the opportunities are is really important to get that, not only the traction from a sales opportunity, but also the voice of the customer. Like you have to be solving for something that they actually care about, and in a way that makes sense. So yeah, I think we did those things well.
And where are your customers today? Because you're not, so I thought that you would be primarily selling here, but you're selling all over the world.
Yeah, we are.
So how was that decision made as well? I mean, being born in MENA, and I think the opportunity is quite big here, given the climate conditions that you've described, right?
Yeah, sure. So no doubt there's a big opportunity in MENA. But from the beginning, and maybe this has roots of like us as like co-founders, like we wanted to create a company that would have global impact. And again, from that driver around like global impact, I think that sometimes maybe we've been overzealous to get our products into the globe. And so, yeah, so now we actually think about these different clusters in terms of opportunities or places where we feel like our technologies are going to be not only really helpful, but also there's a big opportunity. So the GCC is one of those places. Egypt, we're active in. Spain and Portugal and Morocco, are huge opportunities from a protected agriculture perspective, and we're selling into those markets. And then, in the U.S. and Mexico as well is where we're really active.
Okay, and you have different teams in different countries, or?
Yeah, we do. Yeah, so we have like, you can almost think of it as like, it's not really like a sales office, but like a salesperson in these different locations. And then as a leadership team as well, we're quite geographically distributed. So we have a senior person on the ground in these different markets.
Okay. So how has your journey been as an entrepreneur? I mean, you are a scientist. I mean, you're an engineer. And you said, engineers and scientists aren't necessarily the best commercial people. So I'm sure you had to undergo a lot of learning yourself and growth. So how can you tell us a little bit about your experience?
Yeah, exactly. Well, I'm happy to tell you about it. So I think fundamentally I'm a farmer, actually.
Okay.
So growing up on the farm and then being an engineer and a problem solver. So one of the things so for me personally, like I just really enjoy learning. And I learned so much as an entrepreneur. Like I finished my PhD, we started the company, and like I felt like I was learning more as an entrepreneur. Like every day I had to be like learning something, problem solving something to move to the next step. And so the opportunity to be a learner. And then from the perspective of an engineer and like a problem solver, like I used to think when I was a kid, I used to think entrepreneurship was about money. And for some people, that's a really big driver. Mm-hmm. But what I found out as I gotten older and become an entrepreneur. It's that entrepreneurship is really an opportunity for problem solving and bringing something that didn't exist to the world. And that opportunity is amazing as you think about the impact and the opportunity to change people's lives. And whether that's through like a software app, because I use a lot of those and they've changed my life for the better, or whether it's through, a way to grow strawberries with less water in the desert, like an entrepreneur somewhere had a hand in that. So anyway,
okay,
it's cool to be a part of that team of global entrepreneurs.
And did you have mentors throughout that phase to go through that?
Oh yeah,
okay.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, so I like there's other entrepreneurs that I talk to and reflect with. We have, some of our investors have been great sort of mentors, teachers, and then just like I don't know, just knowing that that there's more to learn and that every day there's something new to learn. Like, yeah, I don't know.
What's your vision for the company? Do you want to have more products on the market, or is it more focusing on these products and growing geographically? How do you see
So
it
today
growing?
it's really around the products that we have and like growing them geographically. So and then also we have in our technology team sort of continuous product improvement. So it's like the next iteration and what's coming. And there's some really cool things coming around our core products. So that's our real focus today. As you know well, this sort of state of capital and access to capital globally has changed significantly over the past 5 years. And so we are really focused on commercialization and profitability. That's also the stage we're at as a company, whereas 3 years ago, it was really around product development. But yeah, so we're looking to expand our geographic reach and also just get the product into more hands. Mm-hmm. So
interesting that you chose this journey, because a lot of people who get a PhD end up teaching. So it's interesting that you actually decided to do something different.
Yeah, I remember there was a point when I can't remember. It was during my PhD. Like there was someone that came, and I can't even remember their name, but they came and did basically a pitch to like the students about like why PhD students would make good entrepreneurs. Okay. And they were talking about PhDs and entrepreneurship. And basically this journey you go through as a PhD is like you pick one problem or one topic and you just go really, really deep on it. And so you become the world expert on this one, like very, very thin area. But that process of digging deep and pushing yourself and becoming an expert in that area really teaches you, I don't know how to explain it, but like how to learn or like how to really find the answer and to search, as well as some resilience, because it's quite a difficult process in terms of finishing a PhD and writing that final dissertation. Anyway, so his pitch was like, PhDs can make great entrepreneurs. And he was giving us some examples of that. And certainly I've used some of those skills around problem solving and creative thinking and, seeking out the answer in my entrepreneurship journey.
What are some of the skills you think are really are helping you today to grow this business?
Well, so when you're doing a PhD, you depend so much on what other people have done. So this is like sort of the background, like building the case for whatever research you're doing, right? So you cite all these other scientists who have done all this thing. And mm-hmm. There's a phrase in academia where you say you're standing on the shoulders of giants. And it's this idea that like to get to the point that you're at in whatever research you're doing, like you didn't get there, like you were standing on the shoulders of giants, and then you're just taking it a bit incrementally further. And I think like on the entrepreneurship journey, like there's so much that like you as a person can't do on your own, and you have to lean on others and you have to lean on networks. and you have to ask, and you have to grow, and you have to learn, and just being open to do that, and standing on the shoulders of those giants. So,
did you find like those tasks a bit mundane in comparison to the products you're building?
I mean, I wouldn't
Registering a
describe them
company,
as.
filing for IP, I don't know, talking to lawyers, investors.
I don't know if I would classify them as mundane. I found a bit of them frustrating, like for example, when you're trying to open a bank account and it seems like someone somewhere just doesn't want to open it and you can't understand why. I think that's just more frustration than anything.
Okay.
But otherwise, like, yeah, I mean, it just depends on the task. But I don't know. There's just a lot to learn, and every day there's a new challenge.
Yeah. I think being an entrepreneur is one of the most wonderful experiences someone can go through.
Yeah.
The ability to build something, as you said, that didn't exist before.
Yeah.
Building a team is so exciting. Having the right people around you and getting those first contracts coming in, I think is very exciting. Especially in what you're building as well. Actually see the impact on the products that we produce, that we eat.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
So final words, maybe to both entrepreneurs and investors who are listening, because investors, maybe we can start with investors who seem to be, at least in our part of the world, very focused on software companies and very excited about that.
Yeah.
What do you have to say to them?
To investors focused on software.
Yeah.
Well, look, I think there's an opportunity in software. Don't get me wrong. I think perhaps the difference between like a software opportunity and like something that we're doing, like a deep tech, is that so certainly like it takes a bit longer in terms of like going from the lab to the product stage. But like once you have that product stage, one thing that's probably unique about this versus like a software opportunity is that like with the IP behind it, as well as the fact that like it's a real hard product, like it's something that is, it's much more difficult to copy, right? Or to redo in another market because it's unique, it's protected, and it takes such a long time to get there. So I think there's a difference, but I think the opportunity is also real. We actually think so. We use this term when we're talking to investors sometimes, like because we talk about recurring revenue, and certainly software, like SaaS is a model. You have this recurring revenue from like a monthly access fee.
Because you have both, right? You have the software component and you have the physical products.
But for us, like we think of the hardware and like these roofs almost as like a recurring hardware opportunity. Because these roofs, the covering materials, you're still replacing on like every 2 to 3 year basis. So the model's not so dissimilar. It's just a hard product rather than like a software back.
Mm-hmm. So it will cost you more to build it, but the moat is very big.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that's right.
And the opportunity is very big.
The opportunity is very big.
And to entrepreneurs who want to build deep tech products, what's the recommendations? Go to somewhere like KAUST and do it, or?
No, I mean, I think there's lots of places around the world that you could build it. What I would say to people who are trying to build a deep tech startup is realize what your skills are, and make sure you bring in additional people who have skills that you don't, especially around commercialization. Because I see so many brilliant scientists who have good ideas, but they really need the support of a team and a commercially minded team to bring a product, like actually make a product, not a research project. Do you know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. And then the other thing is like you just have to go where the market is. Like so if your university is not where the market is. And that goes for any university. Like it's going to be outside of the walls where the customers live. Yeah. So.
And it does take courage, I think, to take that product from the lab to external customers and commercialize it.
Yeah, that's
maybe
right.
People get stuck in that process.
Yeah, that's right. And that's where, again, like having a team in place is so important, and realizing like you can't do this on your own. Like you really need that team. And like we all have diverse skill sets. And so building that diverse team to bring the product into reality and then start selling it.
Last question. As you said, as you got older, things things change for you, the way you see the company, the way you run it.
Yeah.
On a personal level, is there something that you do that, or part of your habits or your routine that you have changed or that you have improved? I mean, I know that a lot of people are into mental health and wellness and all of that. So do you have any kind of routines that keep you sharp and excited and have that resilience to keep going?
Well, that's a good question. I mean, like I try to be really disciplined, especially about like, because I have a family, so I try to be really disciplined about when I'm at home, taking that time on the weekends, because there's always work to do. There's always work to do. And especially like, look, this is a pro and a con, but like having a team that spreads from Dubai in the east to like California in the west, like there's a lot of time zones there.
So you're working 24/7.
Yeah, and so there's the opportunity to work 24/7 because someone's working somewhere and they're just sending you something on Slack or like there's an email, whatever. So having that discipline to be like, my phone shuts down and like I'm going to sleep, and then get up in the morning and realize, there's going to be a pile this deep, but like I'll get through it, by the end of the day. And then also making sure I set that time aside, especially on the weekend, to spend with the kids, like because, well, it keeps me sane, it keeps me going, and it's just really important in terms of like I think about the impact that I want our technologies to have in terms of like both on the planet, but also on the families and the people that live here, and I want them to like live good lives and enjoy their families and so I need to make sure that I'm doing that as well in the process.
Lead by example.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Lead by example.
Okay, great. Well, thank you so much for coming.
Yeah, it's been amazing to finally be here. So thank you.
Well, thank you so much for tuning in to this episode of Conversations with Loulou with Dr. Ryan Lefers. I hope you enjoyed it. As usual, don't forget to check out conversationswithloulou.com to listen to all the other episodes. I have a request. Please make sure to subscribe and leave us a rating and a review wherever you watch or you listen to this podcast. I've also left a link in the show notes to a listener survey. I would really appreciate if you could spend 7 minutes of your time on it. It would really help me in getting to know you better. See you in a few weeks.